Chairman Moss, Chairman Brandenburg, Chairman Gilbert, and distinguished partners in the legislature. Today has been called many things already, but what I can tell you about today is a day that should have taken place in the 1980s. Today is a day that should have taken place in the 1990s. Today is a day that should have taken place in the 2000s. Today is a day to build for Michigan's future. This is about setting a foundation for the reinvention of Michigan. This is more than just a budget or a tax proposal. This is our opportunity to say, let's stop living in the past and start looking towards the future. There will be many challenges to this process, but in retrospect, I hope we all look back and to say, this was a defining moment where we got on the path to building a great state, a great future for all of us. Because it is time for us to stand together and to say there are two fundamental goals that got us here and we're going to fulfill for our citizens. We are going to create more and better jobs. And we are going to create a great state for our children and their future. And why do I say these things? It's an open recognition of two things. Our tax system and our budget system are both broken. They don't work well. They don't work right. They did at one point, but over time, they've become complicated, they've put in too many special interest items, and they don't support the future. It is time to reset things. It is time to stand up and say, let's look to a bright future. Let's be excited. Let's look to our children's future, and let's do this together. As part of this, this is more than just balancing numbers. This is more than cash in and cash out. We are also going to do something that should have happened decades ago. We are going to take responsibility for a legacy of debt that has built up over decades. So it is time for us to take responsibility for the present and for the past to have that bright future. That's why we're here today. So as you look at the proposals you're going to hear in terms of tax and budget, don't jump to a line item. Don't jump to a specific item. Don't do it the old way it's been done in the past. Step back for a moment and to say, isn't it time for a comprehensive solution that makes us fiscally strong, balanced, thoughtful, and create an environment for our citizens to succeed today and in the future? And that's why I'm proud to be with you today, so thank you for this opportunity. I mentioned one thing already about the past obligations. I just want to be clear and walk through some of those numbers with you so you understand the magnitude of the issues we're talking about. And I know many of you as legislators understand them, but I don't believe our citizens have had a chance to understand how much we've put on our credit card, how much debt we've incurred, and how little we've paid on those balances. To start with, our state debt. We have over $23 billion in state debt. We have unfunded pension liabilities of over $3 billion. We have unfunded post-retiree benefits, mainly medical, of $14.5 billion. We have tax credits out there that we've given and we will honor. The number you see on the chart is just the number through 2015 of $2 billion. That number could be several times larger. And that number, in fact, could tail out as far as 2032 in terms of obligations we've taken on for tax credits. We have an unemployment loan from the federal government of $3.7 billion. Just adding those numbers together, it's $47 billion in obligations we need to take responsibility for and not leave for future generations. On a per capita basis, it's about $4,700 for each citizen in our state. So as part of this process, we're going to be looking to say, how we can balance a budget today, how we can make payments on our past obligations, and how we can build a reserve for the future. Now, in terms of looking at tax and budget reform, what were our guiding principles? What were those high-level things we looked at to say these are the right things to do in building a clean sheet approach to our future and to move away from this past? Guiding principle number one, there should be no net increases in taxes. Why is that? We know why. We have struggling citizens. We shouldn't be increasing our tax burden on our citizens. Secondly, the cost of our government is too high. And before we talk about taking more money from our hardworking citizens, we need to show value for money. We need to show them that real dollars are going to the right places for real people. And I believe we can do that without raising taxes, but by being more efficient. The second guiding principle, it is time for tax reform. The driving principles there are obvious. It is time to create more and better jobs in our state. Job one is the creation of jobs. The second thing of our tax system, particularly on the business side, it became riddled with credits. The Michigan business tax was like a piece of Swiss cheese with credits for all, just about. It is time for a tax system that is simple, fair, and efficient. That's what our citizens want, and that's what our citizens deserve. Third guiding principle, it is time for a value for money budget. It is time to step back and say, budgeting shouldn't be about spending money. It should be about showing results to people. And we've started that process already. In the State of the State address, we launched the Michigan dashboard for the health of our state. Today, we're starting that process of saying, here are the metrics, the measures, the dashboards for each department and for state government. And we want to work with you on developing those metrics. We're giving you a starting point today, but we want to partner with you and get your perspective on what are the drivers and what are the real results we are going to deliver to our citizens. The second piece of that is it's time to take a longer-term horizon. The day of kicking the can down the road is ending. It is time to take responsibility and to do longer-term horizon planning. So today, we are talking about a 2-year budget, a 1-year legal budget, but a 2nd year for planning. Think about this. Many of you have been watching Lansing. You've been in Lansing or watching Lansing for a long time. Think about the last time you had a governor sit or stand in front of you, look you in the eye, and tell you with this package, we can have a fiscally sound, balanced budget for 2 years out for 2013. I can do that today. That's long overdue. By doing 2012 right, we know we're in good shape for 2013. The other thing is we need to get to this principle of not just paying for today. Again, let's pay down those obligations. Let's build that future, and let's build a reserve. Now, the fourth guiding principle is about shared sacrifice. There are tough things. This was a very difficult exercise. From a personal perspective, these were tough calls to make. Many of us are going to have to sacrifice something in the short term. But I can tell you with confidence, with conviction, by making these sacrifices, we can all win together in the long term. And that's what we need to achieve. Because it's about coming together, being inclusive, and winning together in this state. And that's what we're focused on. In terms of our analysis, though, I think there's an important point I also want to make. We took a new approach of looking at taxes and budgeting. We put them together. and ask a question that should have been asked decades ago. And that question is what's the difference between a tax expenditure, a tax credit, and an appropriation with a program? There is no real difference. And we need to stop treating them differently. We need to get to better accountability and transparency in how we manage our government. And so my answer is, let's stop the tax credits and recognize that in many cases the only reason they were in the tax code is someone had more political power. And they weren't as transparent and they weren't as accountable. And they could go out for decades. As I mentioned, we have tax credits that could run through 2032. Think about that. Now the right answer is there are people, we're a democracy, people should have the right to say we want something special for us. I don't stop that. That's part of our system. But instead of hiding it in the tax code, they should come before the fine members of the Appropriation Committee, raise their hand and explain why they're special, why they deserve something special, and say, just write me a check instead of burying it away. It is time for that. The second piece of shared sacrifice that we did take very seriously, because there were no across-the-board cuts here. There was thoughtful analysis. We did recognize we are in a very difficult time in our economy. And one of the responsibilities of our state government is to provide a safety net. And so we worked hard to protect programs to help those in most need. In particular, to help create an environment to help those people be successful until they can get that job again, and to help them get that job again. That's what this is about. Now, it's only fair when I'm sitting here asking for shared sacrifice that we all participate. So the next point isn't in your presentation, but I just want to share with you that I believe all of us should be part of it, and I'm willing to be part of it. So today I'm making it clear that in terms of my compensation as governor of the state of Michigan, I will make reimbursement so my net salary for this year, for calendar year 2011, will be $1. Now let me turn to tax reform. There are three different areas I'm going to mention. First, the business tax side. The Michigan business tax versus a corporate income tax. Secondly, individual tax reform on making it fair, simple, and efficient. And then a third issue in terms of, again, our safety net, the need for a medical provider tax. First, on the business tax reform. Many of us ran on this platform because it is absolutely the right answer. It is time to eliminate the Michigan business tax. It is a job killer. It is fundamentally unfair. And how can I say that with so much conviction? We all know it's a disaster in terms of how it operates, the gross receipts piece, the credits, the complexity. But in addition, there is another problem. It's a double tax. If you're a business owner that is not a regular corporation, if you're in a partnership, sole proprietorship, which are most businesses, what do you pay in tax for having that business? You pay tax on your individual tax return. You pay 4.35% today. But in addition to that, you are being asked to pay more. If you follow the math, you could be paying over 6% more. You could have a tax rate of over 10% on your business income. Is that fair? It is not. When every other type of income, if someone was a wage earner, if they have interest, if they have dividends, they're paying 4.35%. To ask the people that are creating jobs to pay over 10% is how you kill jobs. That has got to go away. So in terms of benefits, we're not giving away things to business people. We're simply asking them to pay the fair tax rate the rest of us are paying. That's the right answer. The second piece of it is the replacement with the 6% corporate net income tax. That's a fair answer because that's a special category of companies. But we are doing something that is clearly the right answer, is we are eliminating all those credits. We are getting rid of those. We will honor past credits, but it is time for simple, fair, and efficient on the business side. What will this do? This will help us create jobs. It will make us among the most competitive in the country for business taxation. That's the environment we need to do. Let's stop picking winners and losers. Let's stop doing complexity. Let's be fair and let free enterprise work. Individual tax reform. The first thing is the rate should drop. It is already scheduled to drop. We believe it should go to 4.25 and stay there. But what else needs to happen? We should all be treated fairly. Let's clean the slate there too and create a fair playing field of simplicity and efficiency. So it is to wipe out most of the exemptions, deductions, special items there and leave just a handful. But a handful that are meaningful. A handful that recognizes that as people at the lower income levels, we should tax them less. And we do need to support people on property tax because they are too high in our state. But again, it's treating people alike rather than treating people differently. That's the focus of our tax system. And then I mentioned one other thing that I will spend little time on, but I want to mention, is the insurance provider use tax. We currently have a tax on our HMO Medicaid providers, a use tax of 6%. It's going to be challenged by the federal government as being too narrow and not the right answer in order to make assure we get significant federal aid to help our people in most need. So the right answer there is simple, fair, and efficient. Let's lower that rate, let's broaden the base, and put on a simple 1% use tax for insurance providers on their claims. Revenue neutral, but it helps address our people in greatest need. Now let me turn to budgeting, value for money budgeting. What's the focus there? What's it all about? Well, the simplest thing I can show you is just looking at our table. This was last year's budget. This is what we're proposing. And it's more than a shorter pile or saving dollars on trees. It's about, this budget was about line items. And what do line items do? They help assure potentially a special interest is going to get X amount of dollars. It helps ensure that a bureaucracy potentially keeps going and doesn't allow good management practice. What does this budget do? It talks about outcomes and results, dashboards, metrics, measures that we want you to hold us accountable for delivering and showing real results to real people and allowing us to be good managers while we're giving you good disclosure and transparency, but allowing us to be good managers to efficiently manage government, to be able to look at how we do better in the future and come back to you based on good management. It's about time. The second thing is we're putting an emphasis on best practice. And we're asking other jurisdictions and governmental units to join us in best practice. So I'm going to mention one item in particular. In here you'll find an item on statutory revenue sharing. Last year it was just under $300 million. It affects about 30% of our municipalities and jurisdictions. We are actually proposing a net cut of a little bit under $100 million. The balance of $200 million we retain in this budget. But we say to get those dollars, it's not just writing people a check or municipalities a check. We're asking them to partner, to join us in showing best practice. And what do I mean by best practice? There are three main categories. Accountability and transparency. Do they have a dashboard? Are they doing a citizen's guide to financial statements? Employee issues in terms of compensation. Are they going to work with us like we're working and, again, follow our lead? We're not going to ask them to do anything we're not willing to do ourselves. But are we going to work hard on being more thoughtful there and responsible? And then the third category is going to be on service sharing and consolidation, about starting to build plans about how we can partner together, whether it be with surrounding municipalities or with us, but how we can all be more efficient together. And that will be part of our March special message on government reform. Next is the idea of longer-term planning versus the one-year mentality. And I've already mentioned the point that I can sit here and talk about 2013. I know you haven't had that conversation before with another governor asking about that second year. The one-time gimmicks, the kick the can of stuff is gone with this package. Next item is it's time to stop that credit card mentality to spending and to actually say we are taking responsibility. So one thing in this budget is we actually made very difficult decisions and made cuts and made decisions, but we actually show in this budget a payment on those long-term obligations. In this budget, in the general fund, we have $200 million set aside to make a payment on our post-retiree medical obligations. It's amazing the difference some payments can make. We did the math. I mentioned that liability is about $14.5 billion. By making the minimum required payment, which these numbers would all total up, the general fund piece and the other pieces that would go with it, would be more than that minimum amount. And if it was made consistently over time, it would drop that $14.5 billion liability by over $5 billion. That's being responsible. Second piece is we do need to look at employee benefits and total compensation. And our focus is to say, how can we do that without hitting our hardworking employees, and they're fabulous people, in their paychecks? But how can we reform benefits in a positive way for the long term? And so I look forward to working with our appropriation chairs on legislation that will address issues in terms of pension and post-retiree medical, in terms of figuring out the best answers on how to thoughtfully cap those future liabilities, but at the same time follow through on supporting our employees. Our goal is to get to a government that pays as you go, plus pays that legacy obligation down, plus has a reserve for the future. Prudent fiscal management. Isn't that what our citizens expect and want? It hasn't happened for decades. It can happen now and should happen now. Now, future challenges. This budget doesn't solve all our issues. This tax reform does not. So first of all, I want to thank you for your great support and partnership in the things we had in the State of the State address. We're doing fabulously well in partnership with you about passing legislation that I requested then. But there are other things we need to do. We'll be back in March with government reform. We'll be back in April with education reform. And there's actually a second half to the year. But in terms of other things I want to mention to you about this practice and the dollars and cents, is the full implementation of value for money budgeting, and what we're trying to accomplish is not just what happens in terms of the policy side. It's about good management practice and good management and leadership in the executive branch with our departments, with our agencies. And that doesn't happen in 6 weeks. We had a great team of people already in state government. I believe we have a fabulous leadership team that has joined in state government. We are committed to good management. And I would appreciate your cooperation and support, understanding that will take time over the next year and even longer. But one thing I can tell you, we will be working hard on good management, and we will show you real results. And that's something I'm proud to say. When I look at the 2013 budget, I hope to say and come back to to say we don't need those numbers the way we show them because of good management, better efficiency, better customer service to our citizens, and better employee empowerment about them enjoying their jobs. We can say, here are resources for our future to invest in better places than what we're showing in 2013. That will take some time. The second thing is about this pay-as-you-go concept and paying off our prior obligations. This is something, in this budget, we start making that first payment, and we start the limitation process. But we have to have the conviction, the belief of a new model. It's not cash in, cash out. It's about being responsible for the whole balance sheet and building a future where we're paying down those things so we can have great pride in going home at night and looking at our kids, our grandkids, our neighbors' kids, and looking at them and saying, we're not going to dump this problem on you. We're doing our part. We're doing our part, and we're going to leave this in great shape for you. And that's one of the reasons you should be so excited about just staying in this state. Another one, and you've already heard this, and you're already helping the process with the work on Public Act 72, is we have a significant challenge we're going to face with our local jurisdictions and our schools from a financial perspective. Because again, they've been suffering many of the same issues we have. They've been doing cash in, cash out. As governor of the state, I take responsibility for helping those people solve their problems. This is not being governor of state government. It's a responsibility as governor to help step up and be proactive and help address those issues. And that's why I appreciate your support on the Public Act 72 work. Because it's interesting. I will give you one color commentary. I appreciate your indulgence, chairs. Is when people look at that act, everyone's focused on the emergency manager and all the powers and all those kind of questions. But don't lose sight of one of the most important things that we're doing with that act, or asking you to do with us on that act, is to say, it's not about waiting for that crisis where you need the manager. It's how do you create the early warning system and the signals and the parameters to do things before you ever get there. It's in all our best interest is to help people not ever get to that point. And that's what we need to focus on, and there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done over the next couple of years. I have a bullet for other. And what I would mention there is we have more reforms that need to happen over time. But they need to wait their place in time. And they need to happen after we succeed at these fundamental steps. But one I will mention to you is I believe over time we need to partner with our local jurisdictions on looking at personal property tax reform. That is a fundamentally unfair situation, and it needs to be addressed. So this budget, this tax reform, does not solve all our problems. But I can tell you, with great pride, with great confidence, the importance of passing this as a total package. Again, with your help, with your working together, we will improve it. But as a total package, with great conviction, I can look anyone in the eye and say, I am proud of what's been put together here. Because it is a package put together for Michigan's future. To say we're not living in the past anymore. We're looking to the future. And by doing this, in our careers, in my view, this is likely to be the biggest single step that we can take together to redefine the landscape of who we are as a people and create the best opportunities for our citizens, whether they're old, whether they're young, whether they're a business person or a labor person. And in particular, to create that environment for our children. Because it is time to stand up and say, let's do a tax system that is simple, fair, and efficient, and focused on job growth. It is time for a budget attitude to say it's not about spending money. It's about showing results. and looking at the longer term and taking care of not just today, what we have in our bank balance, what we're spending in and out, but all those obligations. So today is a day many people have called a lot of things coming into this meeting. But as I started, this day should have happened a long time ago. Today is a day we shouldn't waste an opportunity. Not doing this would be kicking the can down the road. That's not why I got elected, and that's not why you got elected. A lot of us are going to have to make some sacrifice. And the first reaction people are going to have, we had it in our team when they heard about some of these things as we'd go through this stuff, is the reaction would be, oh my gosh, we can't do that. Or that's hard. And it is. But when you step back and say it all comes together, it comes down to a simple choice. We have a world we're living in, and that if I went around again and asked everyone to raise their hand, we have a system that doesn't work. In good conscience and good faith, can we keep that system? But let's not do it to avoid the negative. I'm the positive guy here. It's time to step up and say the reason to do this isn't to avoid the negative. It's to jump to the positive. To say, this is the statement. To say we are now on the path to being positive, to being forward-looking, to being inclusive as Michiganders. To say we're stepping together into the future to reinvent our state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Governor. Do you have the time to take a couple of questions anyway?
Yes, sir.
I have one for you. Governor, we've heard through the media a bit about reforms of pension taxation. People on the radio suggest that this, in fact, is a tax increase. How do you see the changes in the pension system?
In terms of the pension system, which was one of the most difficult issues to address, but if you look at it, think about our system. We're only one of 3 states with an income tax that don't tax pensions in some way, but that's not the reason to do this. The reason to do this is that mantra I gave you, the guiding principle of simple, fair, and efficient. It's about being fair to people. And it's about creating a level playing field where we're all contributing. And to put it in perspective, the question isn't to ask what someone's giving up, but to say once they've made that movement, once you've made that adjustment, where are they at? And in fact, what would happen is they would be paying the same tax rate the rest of us are paying. And that we're not distinguishing on type of income. But in fact, we also recognize we're talking about our seniors. And we do need to be understanding. And so one thing in particular we are also showing in this proposal is that we would not tax Social Security. We'd actually go beyond the federal law and exclude all Social Security from the Michigan income tax, because it's always had a special place and our seniors can need and use those dollars. So we're still going to continue to exclude Social Security. But beyond that, it's really setting an environment to say people are on a fair basis. And I'll leave it to Brian. We've actually done a fair amount of analysis. For lower income seniors, they still shouldn't pay any tax. But for those of the people that have the wherewithal, because we have seniors today that are receiving pensions where they may have a senior neighbor who didn't get a pension and is still working. And that senior that's still working is paying 4.35%. So it's not to take away from something from someone, but simply to ask them to be with the rest of us in a fair fashion.
Chairman Moss.
Thank you very much, Governor. I appreciate you coming here to tell us about the budget. I generally try not to pay too much attention to radio guys, you know.
He is one.
Being, you know. All right. I want to website not too long ago with a guy who talked a lot about outcomes, and I think that was yours. What would be the sort of specific, and I know you spent a lot of time talking about it here, but we would summarize some of the chief outcomes that we might be expecting from this budget?
Well, one of the key things, Mr. Chairman, is really the concept of watching jobs being created. And if you look at it, one of the key metrics is our unemployment rate. And by doing tax reform, that helps tremendously, as we talked about. Let's create a business environment where it works. But you also asked specifically about the budget. And I can tell you that by having our state finally become fiscally responsible, finally saying we're going to take up essentially good accounting practices where we're taking responsibility not just for today but for the past, that's what business is looking at to say this is the state you want to do business in. This is the place you want to do commerce, because they don't need as business have to worry about some strange things going on, about taxes going up, about being burdened with other things. We're actually going to be a role model for the rest of the country, I believe. This is one of our opportunities to stand up and say, Michigan has its act together. This is the place to come to do business because of the tax code, but also the budget in terms of fiscal responsibility. And it also sets the stage for longer-term growth and development of figuring out if we have safety net issues, if we have other problems, then we're structurally sound and we can look, do we want to invest in the future in employment issues, do we have safety net issues, or simply can we reduce more of the tax burden on all of us? Those are good choices to have when you're fiscally responsible.
Governor, thank you.
Thank you.